Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of Liberty Talk United, where we bring a fresh perspective on the current news from libertarians across the political spectrum. On today's show we will be discussing the government action in response to the flooding caused by heavy rainfall with further threats from an incoming chaos maker called Storm Frank. Although I assure you, it won't be giving you drug advice on your excessive usage of cannabis. On the flip side, at least for Pablo the drug mule, smuggling cocaine will be the last of his issues. Our second topic will be about Sharia courts and their controversy in binding women to marital captivity. In other words, today's radio show will be rainy, followed by Sunni. Over the past couple of days, the north of England has experienced disastrous flooding, with York and Leeds being at the heart of it all. I'll just read you a section from the Telegraph and quote, "After David Cameron admitted that recently installed flood defences had been overrun, he pledged the government would do whatever is needed to help communities recover. A further 200 soldiers have been deployed to northern England, bringing the total to 500, while another 1,000 remain on standby. And while Christmas was ruined for thousands who were forced to flee their homes, many more could be affected with the floods set to return next week. The government announced that every household affected will receive £500 for temporary accommodation and immediate costs, and a further £5,000 to help flood-proof their homes, pledging £61 million to help communities. But overall costs are expected to soar well in excess of the earmarked funds, with the bill to fix the roads in Cumbria alone reaching around £100 million. Our first guest is currently living in Radcliffe, which is one of the areas hit by the flooding. He is helping with local aid and raising money. Aaron Hepworth describes himself as a minarchist and is a managing director for a commercial flat roofing company and a prospective councillor for LPUK, that is, Libertarian Party UK. Our second guest is Jay, a software tester who considers himself a constitutional minarchist currently living in the States. We'll start with you, Aaron. Can you first describe the kind of aid that's going on around your area?
Yeah, well, originally, obviously Facebook's helped, and we set a GoFundMe page up, and that is, in 2 days, it's raised £5,500. The reason it was set up was because some people didn't have adequate insurance for their loss, so obviously that's to help them rebuild their lives. But there's also been a sweeper hire companies come and swept all the silt off the streets. People have turned up to get it all cleaned off. We've had skips donated. We have a local church and people have been taking donations there, and on day 3 they're now not taking any donations. I went down today with some stuff and the pews are full of clothes, of food, of cleaning supplies. I mean, the response from the local community has been massive.
That's just fantastic. So this is just like a kind of community project. There's no. Do you think government should get involved at all in this? Do you think it's even necessary to spend public money?
Government turned up today with sandbags on day 3.
So they haven't actually got that involved in it.
No, I mean, they're trying to get involved now. Obviously, with it being Christmas and all that, I don't think a lot of them were even in work, so to speak. So there's been a delay from them, but the local communities, they filled that gap. I think if government wasn't there, it'd be a lot easier to get things done. Because it's there, people expect them to turn up, and when they don't turn up, that's when they start to see things from a libertarian point of view, that even though they don't know it, they start to look after your neighbour. All the things that libertarianism preaches, really.
So you feel they're crushing the community spirit then, essentially, because people are expecting them to come there, whereas the community is already set up.
I think that you never know, do you, what your community spirit is like until something like this happens. And I think it's happened. I don't think it's just something that's happened in my community alone. It's happened. I've heard stories of all the areas affected, really, where people are coming together and doing things. We've had people from the Midlands come up and work for the day, clearing it. We've had the local restaurants bringing food and stuff. So, I just think it's been a good effort from all.
Yeah, so as you were you were leading on there, you may have quite a strong community because it's a small village, and you tend to find that small villages have this stronger community and everyone knows each other and so on.
Yeah.
But what do you think would be the effect for areas like York and Leeds, which I mentioned earlier, where like the heart of the flooding?
Well, I still think there's a community there. Obviously, I'm not there, so I can't comment. Can't comment as first-hand experience, but the community's still there. I think the problem is, and the problem is the same with everything. Everyone thinks I pay my taxes, the government should do it. You know, and it's a cop-out for a lot of people. So I think the community spirit could be there. Whether it is or not, I can't comment. I hope it is, and I believe it probably is from some of the news stories I've seen in Leeds and in York.
But I mean, obviously the government defences have been pretty crappy. They haven't worked. So do you think it's up to the government to put up these defences against flood, or is there better solutions? I think.
Well, it's hard. You know, from a libertarian perspective, no, the government shouldn't do anything like that because we just mess things up. But in our current sphere that we're in now, it's only going to be... The problem with government is it's all short term, right? So they're only thinking 5 years ahead. And flood defences take a lot more than that. But I think it should be given to a panel that have nothing to do with government. They're given a budget and they've just got to get it done. The political will's got to be there.
Okay. Yes. Jay, do you have any kind of opposing views? Do you think the government should get more involved? Do you think that they should be the ones setting up the defences, or?
Well, obviously, as you mentioned, I'm a constitutional minarchist, and I believe that the only position that the government has in protecting the people from natural disasters is defending the people. Obviously, it is as citizens, it's our personal liberty to be able to prepare for natural disasters, such as ensuring that we have insurance for our homes and our families, stocking up water, storing food, things like that. But that's not the government's place. The government's place is to, obviously, according to the United States Constitution, is to actually defend its people. So if, for example, another foreign country was to see the floods in the UK as an opportunity to invade that part of the country, it would be the government's job to step foot in and defend the people. But also, that's not the only thing. Since the floods have struck in that area, it is important to continue to protect the people. So, yes, they have to be there, but as we heard, that they've been slow in their response. So, what is it that really the question that we should ask is, is that the actual solution? And I don't think so, but they could have done things better by the sounds of it. And I'm quite ashamed to hear that that's the case, that they took 3 days. Everybody's always quick to criticize George W. Bush during Hurricane Katrina, and that was very slow. And this is just as bad, if not, well, I don't think it's worse, but you know what I'm saying here. I think that it is the government's job to come in and make sure that everybody is okay. Not, and I mean that in a very limited sense. I mean, the safety of the people is a priority of the government. And so if they're not safe, they should do something. Now, how they do that, I don't know the answer to that, but I know that they should ensure the safety of the people. I hope I didn't ramble on too much.
That's fine. You've got kind of like a trend or a fashion in the United States of, I believe they're called preppers, doomsday preppers, of people stocking up on food and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, that is actually I would call that a stigma term because I don't think anybody's really preparing for doomsday. I mean, there are some people that are, but I'm a prepper, but I prepare. I'm prepared for the inevitable of something happening, and it could be anything. It could be economic collapse. It could be a hurricane. I live in Panhandle, Florida, and this is a hurricane alley, basically. So I keep a lot of water stocked up. I'm allowed to bear arms here. And I know that in times of disarray, there's going to be people trying to hurt and steal from other people, and it's my right to be able to prepare in that aspect as well. So
yeah, we've had looters here. We've had people looting in the night when people have been forced to leave the home. Obviously, we don't have a right to bear arms here. So the police haven't.
No, I know that the law there, because I'm from there. I grew up in the UK. I know the law is if you carry anything on your person with the intent, if it can be proven, to use as a weapon, then you're already breaking the law, which is absolutely ridiculous. So how are people in this time able to defend their lives and their property? The government then, because they've taken away the rights of the citizens, they now have to intercede more. So they've actually done themselves a disservice by disarming their people. And that's where preppers are more prepared than others. I do believe that there are some farmers up there who've got some shotguns who are ready to go, and whatever the law says or not.
Yeah,
but yes, sure.
We've had to take shifts. People have been taking shifts, just patrolling, obviously with no weapons, but at least, you know, not burglars aren't particularly armed here, as well as citizens, luckily.
Well, that's definitely a good thing, but it's never a sure thing. You never really know. But it is important to have a presence of people being aware, by awake and getting on shifts and keeping their eyes peeled. Because when we look after each other, then we get this community base where we're able to support each other, as you guys were talking about earlier. And that's kind of what prepping's about too. You know, you kind of start a little community. You plan this way ahead of something happening, and you take care of each other. And that's basically what they're doing, but they obviously can't bear arms, but they're looking after each other. So it is our individual liberty to do those very things, to prepare in any way, shape, or form. Whether, you know, like I gave you examples, or I'm not going to repeat myself. I do that a lot. But it is definitely our job to do that. But obviously, you're not going to be able to prepare and not have some kind of effect on your person or your property. So that's where the government should get involved. It's got to ensure the safety of its citizens.
Yeah, do you feel kind of like that citizens in this country in particular, like in York and in Leeds, they may not be that well educated on such matters, and that for that reason they don't like stock up on basic essentials?
Americans are much less trusting of the government. It's something I envy a lot about Americans. So they're always prepared to, whereas we're very open to government. By and large, we believe the government's going to look after us. Americans don't generally, from the ones that I've met anyway.
Well, we have every right to not trust the government. Look at the redcoats that were tyrannically invading our liberty.
I'm sure they still do that in Canada as well.
Well, what's funny is we get along a lot better with Canada now than we did before. Although the Mounties still wear red coats.
Yeah.
I lived in Canada for a bit, and all they talk about is the War of 1812. That's their war.
Yeah, I work with some Canadians, and they bring that up a lot. And I say, well, why didn't you just take over the land? Why'd you give it back? They're just too nice.
They did play hockey, eh?
Yeah, they're pretty good at hockey. So we digress. So we've basically, in this discussion thus far, have come to the conclusion that we shouldn't have a reliance on the government as an individual, that we need to be more self-reliant. I mean, that's pretty much the conclusion we've come to thus far. In preparation of a natural disaster, our own personal preparation is paramount and first and foremost before anything else gets involved, including government.
Yeah. But also that communities, I mean, in England as well, to try and preach libertarianism in England is, I imagine it's not easy in America, but in England it's very hard. And in the north of England it's even harder. But it just shows that people are the values of libertarianism. They are libertarian. They just don't really know it yet.
There are some kind of like suggestions that libertarianism was born in Scotland. I mean, like you've got Braveheart as a film, for an example, and then you've got the classical economists like Adam Smith, although he was considered a bit of a lefty, but he was very kind of pro free markets. So imagine preaching libertarianism in Scotland now. I mean, that's a tough sell. But I think what we need to do with things like the floods is to show that actually people are libertarian. We need to show people who don't understand that they are, who think that, oh my God, you're going to take away the health service.
We need to start saying, no, it's just about being together in the community. Look at you raised this community. There's probably 150 people in my village. If that, they've raised just over $5,000 in 3 days to help these people who've got no insurance, and that's exactly what would happen every time.
Yeah.
I know it was, but people don't see it. They just see it as no, it's like some sort of horror story to them. If we show them that they've done it, that is the way forward for libertarianism in a grander term.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a nice conclusion, Jay. We'll move on to our next topic now, so we don't miss our other guest. So our next topic was reported a while ago on the 6th of December. I think it was in both the Independent and the International Business Times, but it's recently flared back up on social networks and other news channels throughout the internet. It is a study found that in certain parts of the UK, women have been held up in marital captivity by Sharia courts. Now, it must be noted that whilst these Sharia courts cannot overrule any rulings of the regular courts, women in certain Muslim communities are pressured to get a divorce via the Sharia courts. So that means that if there's, women looking for advice of other women, they'll probably tell them to go to the Sharia courts rather than go to a normal court, and the man will probably go to the Sharia court as well. The Independent reports that judges at the courts uphold the theory and practice of the stronghold men have over women. So it's really surprising a lot of kind of like feminists haven't got on this issue, because it's a really big feminism issue. If you want to talk about female oppression, you've got that right there. So this moves on to our next guest, who is Nick Hurley. He's an independent political researcher at Brighton University undergrad and a postgraduate at the War Studies Department at King's College. He describes himself as both a conservative and a libertarian, or was it a conservatarian, as he put it?
No, it was a free marketeer with a strong emphasis on our domestic security here in the UK. That's what it was. Thank you for having me.
So, why do you think this is incompatible with UK and its history?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say that private arbitration as an instrument for solving disputes between individuals in a voluntary setting in any way is incompatible with the UK and its history. But I would maintain that this is only the case as long as individual rights and the rule of law as it stands today are upheld. What we cannot have is a competing legal system which overrides common law of this country, which goes back many hundreds of years, and which very much lends to the further ghettoization of certain communities in British society. You mentioned that the article was indeed published on the 6th of December, but this is a problem that goes back many years now. And indeed, in 2010, there were multiple reports in the press about precisely these issues. And it's about time that British society really woke up to the problem.
So do you think we should be persuading the women and the men who would agree with our values to move to a much more kind of liberal system where women arguably have more power over the divorce than men do?
Well, I think what I'd say about that is that this is, of course, a very complicated issue, and I would say it's primarily a problem within Islamic culture and within Islamic theology itself. And because of that, external persuasion from non-Muslims is probably going to meet quite a lot of resistance most of the time. So if we want to think tactically, I think we have to say that it's going to be very difficult to see this problem solved unless this is an issue which is taken on by and for Muslim women as part of a concerted campaign. And really, until we see that, I do not think that any persuasion by any non-Muslims is going to have that much effect.
I mean, we've got one MP front bencher in the Conservative Party, Sajid David. I believe his family was Muslim, and I think his wife has recently been Muslim, but they haven't, because we're quite a secular country. Politicians don't tend to talk about their religion. But his wife has recently been known to study it and Do you think he would be a good spokesperson for this, or do you think there'd still be resistance against it purely because he's a politician and he doesn't like to kind of say openly that he is a Muslim?
Absolutely. I think there's going to be resistance probably against any lone individuals that come out and say these things. Unfortunately, what often happens is that the spokespeople of communities tend to be self-certified. They tend to simply be the loudest people from their communities, and they also tend to be the most extreme. And so equally, having lone individuals, be they MPs or otherwise, trying to lead these sort of campaigns, I would doubt the effectiveness of that, as much of a problem that may be. Ultimately, until we see Muslim women really coming together and having this fight themselves, and indeed being supported by people such as Sajid Javid, then I think we are going to see this problem continue.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But where do you see that this kind of persuasion is actually going to come from? Because if no individual within the kind of community comes out of it, do you think we should be protecting the rights of the women who are going through that court, who holds no bearing whatsoever as to whether they can actually get the divorce or not? And I think there was one part of the article that said, or at least from one source, that said a woman said she wanted to split up with her husband because her husband was hitting her, and the court laughed at her, saying, "Why did you marry him then?" Should we be stepping in right there and protecting her rights and saying, "Well, no, you should be able to get a divorce, and we're going to protect you from this person. You know, there may not be sufficient evidence, but at the very least, you should be able to get a divorce for it."
Certainly, if a allegation of any sort of violent domestic abuse was to actually come into the public domain, I would expect the police, quite rightly, to step in at that point. But hopefully, I think what we would like to see is the problem not getting to that point, and that is where it does become very difficult. So absolutely, the rights of the women really are what's important here. In Sharia family law, the woman is extraordinarily discriminated against in these sorts of issues in a whole number of ways. And indeed, that's by no means denied by the Islamic Council of Britain, the Sharia Council of Britain. And so the problem is when to step in and how to do it. And so I certainly would welcome a full-scale parliamentary inquiry into this issue, because they can attain quite unparalleled resources in order to look at problems and to make suggestions and to do some quite extensive analysis on these sorts of issues. And so something like that may provide some avenues for action in that sense.
And lastly, do you see this is actually going to go anywhere else? Like, could it potentially lead to more powers, as in they would abuse the system more and more to implement more and more Sharia law?
Absolutely. This inevitably is a problem that's getting worse. And the problem with this is that we do not know how this is going to end. We cannot see the end position that British society is going to end up in, with the further imposition of a rather radical strand of Islamism, often being advocated and perpetuated within communities up and down the country, particularly in urban centres. So although we can't predict these consequences absolutely, I unfortunately would say that they are going to be rather dire unless the political class wakes up. And I would make reference to, I believe, what your American guest was saying in regards to the duty of any government, of course, the defence of its citizens, which is absolutely paramount. And really, we're getting to the stage where if our political class does not wake up to the threat posed to our way of life, to the very fundamental basis of liberal democracy and individual rights, then there is a very dark road ahead for this country.
Can I jump in a little bit here? I mean, from my perspective, I'm not to take anything away, but the religion of Islam is 600 years behind Christianity, roughly, somewhere about there. You know, if we look where we were 600 years ago,
absolutely,
we're looking at it from our perspective, and it's a twisted perspective to look at things from. I think it's come a long way, and exposure of people to our way of life, I don't think this will be an issue in the future. I mean, I go take my dog, this is a bit random, but I take my dog for a walk in the park near me, and there's Muslim women going out with white men, there's Chinese people going out with black people. You know? Eventually, we're all just going to homogenize. The world is getting a lot smaller very quickly, and there's going to be teething problems with it. But I think these things will just dissipate. The only reason these courts have power is because these women perceive that they have power. And as soon as they realise they don't have power anymore, it'll be gone.
Well, I
don't see this as a long-term issue that's going to lead into some black hole of an ISIS cells in all our towns, which seems to be kind of implications here.
Well, I think you've combined there both an amazing understatement describing the problem and the struggle we're faced with as teething problems, and secondly, quite an exaggeration with an ISIS cell in every town. I certainly would not describe the numerous plots which have been attempted on UK soil as teething problems. Indeed, it is a testament to those who work every day to maintain security that we have not seen atrocities that we have seen occur in the likes of Paris and all, of course, across the Middle East every single day. In terms of there being an
my mum's a counter-terrorism officer, so I know the threats that we face. But that is linked again to foreign policy, and there's a lot of other issues to talk about here than just ISIS or threats and making idle ideological statements about the threat of Islam. I just don't.
It's certainly not the threat of Islam. It's the threat of Islamism.
Oh, sorry, a radical Islam. Sorry.
Radical Islam. And if we do not wake up to that threat, then I must say we are tying the noose upon which we will hang, because the ideology of Islamism does not have any respect for individual rights. And the irony of our problem is that
the same thing was said about communism, the same thing was said about Nazism.
And it was very true.
And they were all defeated.
It all just melted away. No, we don't face them problems anymore.
But they were significant threats that killed a lot of people.
Fighting them problems anymore.
Nazism did not melt away. Unfortunately, Nazism was defeated in a very bloody world war, and communism indeed collapsed because of its own numerous inefficiencies and social problems. However, I would urge you, and I'm sure you'd agree as a fellow libertarian, to consider that the presence of Marxist-Leninist ideology in Western society is incredibly powerful. And so I would not dismiss the threat that communism posed in any way.
Such as the current leader of the Labour Party.
Yes, indeed. Comrade Corbyn.
Comrade Corbyn.
Jay, do you have any opinions to bring into this, or should we move on to that?
Yeah, I think I do. I just want to quickly, before I give my opinion, just give a little background. I've actually spent some time in the Middle East, in Baghdad specifically, which is very close to where currently ISIS is involved. But I think we digress by talking about terrorism in itself, when really we were supposed to be talking about Sharia. So I'm going to bring us back onto topic. From my understanding of Sharia, that is the court system of Islam.
Yeah.
Islam itself is a theocracy. It is in itself a government, and that's what they want, and that's what the Quran actually preaches in its doctrine. And so anything other than Sharia is considered immoral, wrong, and not correct, would be, I guess, the best way of articulating that. And from my personal experience, if there are any other court that tries to get involved, it's viewed as nothing. And that is where we have our problems in our Western society with getting involved with Islam, is the fact they don't view it as equal to them. And that's where we fall short.
But how many people do you hear? You hear about, I mean, there's an article at the beginning of the year that I read that a third of Muslims no longer practice their faith anymore. And that's just what's going to happen. People are going to move away from it. It's going to get diluted. I just don't see it. And we all come across as raving right-wingers when we go on about Islam all the time. I don't see it as the big threat.
I hear you. And I was actually the one to get away from from the terrorist talks and move into
Yeah, well, I'm
Sharia
not talking about but the Sharia and everything. I think it will all just melt away in the end. I don't think it'll.
But
The
that's what people
legitimacy comes from reading, the Quran to the letter, and people will get away from that as time goes on, I think.
I understand that, and I agree with that partially in some parts of the world, such as like Jordan and other countries in that particular area who are starting to become more westernized. But unfortunately, there are so many people that are moving away from Islam, but there are just as many that are converting to Islam.
Yeah.
And so it kind of equates itself out. But moving away from that right-winger talk about Islam, if we as non-Muslims learn to read the Quran and try and use it in our way of communicating. I'm going to quote my libertarian friend, some of you may know Tho Bishop. We need to win the hearts and minds of Muslims. We need to show compassion to them, regardless of our suspicions, not sure if they're good or bad intent in their person. But if we do that and we preach to them liberty, and we preach to them freedom, we just may win their hearts and minds over.
I agree. I
certainly value the optimism, and I think we certainly need quite a bit more of that. Although we also need some hard-headed thinking here and a realization that there is a problem and that at the end of the day, somebody has to stand up to that problem.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And it's very important for us to understand what's going on and to address it head on, as opposed to, we talked about feminism earlier. That is a big problem with Islam and Sharia right now, is that feminists are very left-wing, and left-wings try to say, oh, but we're very cultured. We need to accept otherworldly cultures. And what's funny is that they're very quick to condemn Christianity and their law and the laws of the Torah, which is actually Judaic. They seem to forget that Jews and Christians are different. But they never say anything against Islam and the Sharia law that's implemented. And it has such terrible impact on women. And I think we need to start addressing that as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And I think that's a great place to end the discussion on that. That was kind of almost a perfect summary of the discussion. So now we're going to quickly move on to a more lighter part of the show, actually, looking ahead. And I'm going to ask my guests some random pop questions about libertarian, which I put to them on the spot. The first one is, out of all the Star Wars characters, current and old, which one would you say is the most libertarian and why?
Han Solo.
Han Solo, because he's all about capitalism, free market, and guns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not
Luke Skywalker?
No.
Luke Skywalker's a shitty left-winger. I want to get the droids. Where's the power converters?
I don't know. I think Chewbacca's a bit misunderstood.
I think Chewbacca's a status because he only thinks with his stomach.
That is a very good explanation. The second one, this will probably actually invoke more of a discussion. I think Jay will be better at this one than all of us. But if someone had a gun to your head, who would you vote for, Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush?
Oh, God.
Rubio.
Rubio. The world doesn't need another Bush.
Exactly. I've actually met Marco Rubio, believe it or not. He came to my work, and I got to shake hands with him, and talk with him for a few minutes. He's very, very intelligent, and that's very scary. But if I had a gun to my head, I would vote for Rubio, even though that would scare the crap out of me. But Bush is a whole nother level.
I kind of remember the Donald Trump insulting Jeb Bush on the debates, where he just pretty much told him to shut up, and Jeb Bush was like, okay.
Trump owns the show. I'm telling you, he knows how to get people drawn in and interested and attracted. But unfortunately, if you had to put a gun to my head and vote between Trump and Rubio, I'd vote Trump. And that's scary too, because he talks about shutting down the internet. That's like limiting, as an American in the Constitution, the First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, press, and religion. I mean, right there, you're limiting it, and that's scary.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's a Democrat, though. He's a Democrat standing as a Republican.
He was everything. A Democrat. Yeah, he's everything. He definitely has views on both sides, but he's definitely seen the impact that Democrats have had and how easier they are to manipulate with money. That's why he's decided to run as a Republican. He's given money to these Democrats. He's even said that. He said they're so easy to manipulate with money. Republicans, not so much. And I've realized how our government's so twisted because of that. He goes, I just paid people for what I wanted. I got what I want. He gave money to Hillary. And it's just all about personal agenda and money.
Yeah, that's why they're all so much in the centre ground now. You're not really voting for anything anymore. You're kind of voting for the same.
Yeah, it's all about government.
We got a right-wing government in England, supposedly, and we got the minimum wage ramped up by like £3 an hour.
I think supposedly is the opposite there.
It's crazy.
I think David Cameron is one of the most centre ground conservative leaders there has ever been.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah.
He's extremely centrist. And John Major was more right wing than he was. And I was a child when he was in office. In saying that, it's just absolutely ridiculous, but it's the truth if you look at it. If you had to weigh them up against each other, John Major was more right wing than David Cameron. John Major was quite centrist.
John Major was coming after Thatcher, though, whereas Cameron's coming after Blair, which is a lot easier to be centre ground. He's basically Blair, heir to Blair, like he said he was. He has been that guy, I think.
Oh yeah, there's no difference between Blair and him at all. There's just no way. There's no difference at all.
No.
Does anyone know the MP, Jacob Rees-Mogg?
I do know him. Yes, I was actually speaking to him the other week.
You sound so much like him, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Even in the way you talk, it's just you're probably going to come up with some 20-letter word or something that will be
like Floxy Knocky Nicky Pilification, I think he said.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that Welsh?
He's an MP of the Conservative Party, Jay.
Okay, all right, thank you. I wasn't sure which party he was with. I thought maybe UKIP, because I know there's some guy with the middle or second name Reese and the UKIP party. I wasn't sure.
I don't know.
Sorry, awkward silence.
Considering the Labour Party has gone very far to the left with Jeremy Corbyn sitting on the leadership bench, is it a surprise that there hasn't been a kind of prominence in right wing? Because you tend to find when extremes go one way, the other end of the spectrum goes to the extreme as well.
You want to know why that is?
Yes.
It's because I've noticed this in the UK from my family and friends and spending time over there. It's the same thing is happening over here in America as well. If you are conservative in any way, and I don't mean conservative party, you know what I mean. Conservative is in standing by our constitutional foundation of our nations. You're automatically labeled as a racist. And that is a bad stigma, and that is why people move away from that. In no way, shape, or form has UKIP ever said that one race or races is inferior or superior to another race or races, which is the dictionary definition of racism.
Not as a
but
party.
They label it as a party. But they label it as such, and it's a if you know who Saul Alinsky is, it's an Alinsky tactic. He was a mentor to Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. He's a very big Marxist. Rules for Radicals was a book written by him. I highly recommend that you check it out. It'll help you understand the left wing. But that is why there is not a big movement in the right wing. But maybe there is. I mean, I see
even UKIP is now moving towards the left. Everything's shifted that way. Conservative.
They are. You're right. With the NHS funding, with the NHS funding that they wanted to implement when Nigel Farage was running for office there, I was like 10 point what billion? What expansion? That's making government big.
Yeah, they've moved to the left. I was in UKIP a couple of years ago, and then obviously they pulled the immigration line a lot, and they were just talking about bigger and bigger government, and it was crazy. So I just left. I couldn't be part of that. But everything moves to the left in England at the moment.
They've segregated Douglas Carswell from the rest of his pie, and that's had a really harmful effect on UKIP because he's a massive free marketeer. He's probably the most pro-immigration out of the whole party. So he would appeal to the masses more than any of the other politicians inside of UKIP. But they've segregated him out because he doesn't like Nigel Farage. It's absolutely ridiculous, and he's their only MP. So he's the only person in the party who has any political influence, and they've segregated him outside the party. They're just imploding in on themselves, and it will either leave a void, or the void will be wiped out, and everything will move to the left again.
Well, I think part of the problem, is just how fractured the centre-right is in this country, and the consolidation that indeed is taking place under Corbyn with the more far-left elements is quite worrying. It seems that Farage made a classic strategic error at the last election, where he simply did not fulfil the word that he had made his whole selling point for all of his years prior to that. What had made him attractive was that he was not like other politicians to go back on his word. But that's exactly what he did when he didn't resign. And he could have resigned for 6 months and come back in a blaze of glory, and it would have certainly helped the cause against the Death Star of the European Union. But that does not mean that all hope is lost. There are people such as Jacob Rees-Mogg who are quite good to rally around. But I have hope we may see some others come out in coming years, and who knows, that may change. We may see a stronger centre-right in this country, but altogether this is an incredibly left-wing country, and I doubt that's going to change anytime soon.
I believe Daniel Hannan is rising to prominence with the EU debates coming along. He seems to be leading it, actually, which is quite surprising. I think
he should, though. He's our only real...
He's amazing. He's brilliant.
Our most libertarian. He's our... I don't want to say he's our Ron Paul. That's a bit of a stretch. But he is our only sort of libertarian politician that we have, really. That sticks true to it. It doesn't...
Definitely.
You know, Boris Johnson will say he's a libertarian on some issues, but on other issues, he's the biggest statist you'll ever meet in your life. You know?
Especially when it comes to London.
On drugs.
Pardon?
I said Boris Johnson is on drugs.
That's what's he called? George Osborne. He's on drugs.
Yes.
Isn't Boris Johnson renouncing his US citizenship?
I'd not heard
Did
that.
he really? I remember reading about that.
He got charged a massive tax on selling his house from the US. So he's selling his tax in London, and he got charged tax from the US. That's why he's looking to renounce his US citizenship.
And they had to get a piece of their pie.
I didn't think you could have two citizenships with US citizenship. I thought you had to just be US.
Jay is a dual citizen.
Yes, thank you. In my British passport and American passport, in my British passport it says born Mountain Home, Idaho, and in my American passport obviously says the same thing. But if you look in the British passport, it says unless you stand before the Queen or one of her consulates and relinquish your passport and your citizenship, if you just like shred your passport, you're still a citizen. You just don't have a passport. So a lot of people in America, they very, very nationalist. They say you have to choose. That's not true. You don't have to choose. You have the right to go and to go back to your country of birth and visit family and things like that.
That's an urban myth, I believe. That I genuinely thought you have to just be American, and that was it.
No, that you're right. It is an urban myth. It is.
It would be, I think, removing dual citizenship, if America ever did do that, it'd be incredibly destructive. I mean, you have to think of all the people that are working in, like, Silicon Valley, just those kind of jobs that probably have a dual citizenship, maybe with their European or Asian or African home, because they do get a lot of immigrants come into Silicon Valley, and sometimes they decide they want to stay there, but they want to keep their citizenship. And I think if they were made to choose, you know, considering businesses starting to thrive in places like China, like India, because you've seen a lot of consumer products come out of those countries, they may choose to go back home, and there'll be a big drain on the intelligence if that ever happens. I don't think it will ever happen, but you know, Donald Trump might be one of those people to set the fire.
Well, I honestly do believe that dual citizenship is definitely a blessing on people that are able to get it. But as you said, I do also believe that it can be a problem within intelligence communities. But again, I mean, I know many people. I have friends over here in the States who are in the military, and they are not born here.
Yeah.
They have become naturalized, and they're very, I mean, I have a friend called Eddie. He was born and raised in Peru, communist Peru, and he joined the Marine Corps after naturalizing, and he is so constitutional. Now it is insane, and there are many people like that. I know people from Kenya. I know people from Mexico, being the majority, that are in the military or are formerly in the military that are so devoted to the cause of the United States Constitution, freedom, and liberty.
I think you appreciate it. I think you appreciate something more when you work for it rather than you're born to it. You know, if you grow up.
Yeah, I do believe so. I mean,
to America and think, wow.
Well, there is an American dream, and a lot of people don't know that. They don't see it or they haven't experienced it. But there really truly is an American dream, and when you experience it, I think it really does change your mind on how you view the world and how you view yourself and how you view others, which in itself is very libertarian.
Of course, Jay experienced his American dream in the UK. No, I'm kidding.
That is why I left the UK. I got tired of the 40% tax rates getting charged.
Oh yeah, and
yes. Well, don't rub it in that you can leave this wet rock for bright pastures.
I believe marginal tax rates are actually higher now by a very tiny percentage in the US than they are in the UK. So.
It depends. It all depends on which state. If you're in California, exactly. I would agree. But I mean, in certain other states where cost of living is low, the taxes are also low, and so it really, I would not agree with it in those areas.
Corporation tax in America is 40%, though, isn't it? It's flat 4%, 18% here now.
For corporations, yes, and I think that also depends on the size of the corporation. You must own over a certain amount, which is in itself kind of a socialist move. But yeah, I mean, when you need to, like, have you guys ever heard of Herman Cain? He ran for Republican. He was a Republican candidate for president in the last election. Do you remember him? He was one of the few black Republicans. Herman Cain he's very libertarian minded in the aspect of economy. He proposed a flat tax of 999 across the board, sales tax, corporation tax, and income tax. I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, I think Rand Paul proposed a similar thing of about 14%.
17%, I believe.
17. Sorry.
I'd rather have 9. It leaves me more money in my pocket to spend in the economy by buying stuff, which stimulates the economy.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I guess that really depends on what kind of economics you subscribe to.
Well, it all comes down to it comes down to free choice, which we all agree on. If I've got more money, I also have more options and free choice to spend it as I see fit or save it, which even if I save it, it goes to a bank or a credit union or a building society, whatever you call it over there. And that actually helps as well. I mean, all that money is part of the economy.
That's right.
Well, we have 8 minutes and 30 seconds left. I would just like to make my last point, and then I'll hand it over to you guys. But going back to what Jay said about people being devoted to like the Constitution and stuff like that, I think we as a country, in particular, the UK, has to remember that a lot of nationalities actually took to arms during World War I and World War II to defend our way of living. Even though they weren't from our country, they came to defend our way of living against both Nazism and the Axis in World War I, and we still owe a lot to those kind of people that decided to fight for us during that time. And bringing it back to one of the other issues, which is kind of to defend certain groups of Muslims. A huge percentage of those people were Muslims, so there definitely are moderate Muslims that will be defensive of our cause, and I think we need to, as Jay rightly said, he quoted them, so we need to win their minds with our ways of liberty and freedom. So over to you guys. Yep, exactly. Over to you guys if you have any finishing points.
I don't have any.
With regards to that point, especially, I think Muslims, by their very nature, are conservative people. They come here, they start businesses. You know, they're trying to avoid as much tax as we are, but we get tied down with other things, you know, about the culture they come from. So if we can focus more, like like was said before by Jay, if we can focus more on the liberty, I think we'll win a lot of Muslims round. Quite easily, actually.
Yeah,
well,
I agree.
Good luck. I mean, I would certainly like to see how that would manifest in practice. Although I would say that there is a very fine line to be drawn between winning hearts and minds and appeasement. And that's a problem, a strategic problem that is going to constantly be faced in this debate and in the attempts to try and lessen some of the more anti-free elements of Sharia and Islamic culture, which do exist in our society. And certainly, if we want to live in a more free and liberal society, sometimes we do have to be quite firm in our words about that.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. And when it comes to multiculturalism, I think it's many different people under a common law, and that common law is the British natural law, the law we inherited from the land.
That's right.
And American, I might add.
I think American heritage are natural.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you very much to my guests, Jay, Nick, and Aaron. And thank you very much to you guys for tuning in to Liberty Talk United. We'll see you very soon.
Yes.
Thank you.